aboard, everyone, to another edition of Tuesday Night Live. I'll hand you over to Pete. How you going, mate?
Yes, good evening, Fane. Thanks very much for joining us, everybody. It's another edition of the Crowcast Tuesday Night Live. Great to have you all along with us tonight. Really big show lined up. We've got all of the news from around the AFL, plenty to discuss from the world of the Adelaide Crows, and without further ado, our panel tonight, Nikki and Macca, and how are we all tonight?
Evening all.
Very well.
Very, very good. Wow.
Shiny for once.
That could have been the most pumped up intro I've ever bloody done, and you're just there. Yeah, rightio. Love it.
I was thinking that. It's a massive build up in there.
There's a massive build up for not much, was it?
Yeah, good.
Well, to be fair, I have had the last 2 days off sick, but that's not as bad as what Mac has been through. So I think both of us being a little kind of, it's acceptable.
Pete,
no,
we're
you're
going
absolutely right, Nikki.
We're going to have to carry it tonight, mate.
I think you're right. You're spot on. We know that you've both been in your sick beds, and we appreciate you here tonight, and hope you're both not feeling too badly. All right, without any further ado, there must be some excitement in the Nicky's news.
Do I have music? There we go. Oh, it's really hard to do the news tonight and not go straight to the cockwomble because so many things happened that came out of the news, and you just want to. Well, I don't want to physically slap some people, but they basically. So we'll start off with some stupidity from some players, particularly Melbourne players on the weekend. And so, yeah, Jordan Lewis and his good bloke thing, and it really upset Robbo on AFL 360 because he's like, he used to be a thug and he wasn't a thug anymore. It's like, Robbo, have you been watching him play for the past couple of years? I mean, the guy had a carryover record. That's why he got 3 weeks. So breaking Cripps' jaws, you've got Martin as well, who's now got a hairline fracture, and he's a possibility of actually playing against West Coast on Friday night. So when are they playing? Richmond playing West Coast. I see injury for Cripps, who's missing a couple of weeks probably, and Tippett has done his ankle, and I'd have to say that Brian Taylor was absolutely disgraceful of some of the comments he made regarding Tippett when that happened. Did any of you guys see that game at all?
No, what did he say? I thought I had seen it. I can't remember what did he say that you thought was disgraceful, Nick?
He basically called him soft in terms of injuries. And the fact that, you know, he had a number of concussions. If our medical staff are sitting somebody on the sidelines and not allowing them to play, that's not because they're soft. It's because it's actually detrimental to their health. I thought that was pretty disgraceful. And he did kind of get called up on it a little bit later, but very softly by Bruce. But nobody ever actually came out and just said, hey, that's just not on, which I thought should have happened. There was a lot of discussion regarding umpiring and some really shocking decisions. Now, both Macca, you and Pete, and also Phoenix, we've all played the game. As a defender, when you're running towards goal, do you have time to turn around and have a look and see if a player's coming at you, or are you just going to get that ball over the line?
There was a massive debate about this on SEN over the last couple of days, and Kevin bloody Bartlett's a dickhead. The law says that the player must be within 10 metres of the goal line and under physical pressure. And Bartlett's assertion was that physical pressure meant that they actually had to be being touched or tackled or something like that. But you can be under physical pressure and not have a finger laid on you. A bloke could be right on your hammer. That's physical pressure. The guy is physically there. You're not imagining it. The guy is there.
Yeah.
I think it's the most ridiculous freaking rule. It's the most overthought, unnecessary rule, and it's just a laughing stock. I mean, look at what Hendo did for Hawthorn in our game. I mean, he basically just intentionally fluffed his take, fumbled it, but essentially it amounted to the same thing, and he no one batted an eyelid.
Yeah, that's true.
And the thing is that there was already a punishment for rushing a ball over the line. You were giving a score to the opposition.
Exactly.
It was already a punishment there. And the fact that the law actually states, and this is the Picken one, is that they put him on the angle. But the law states he needs to go to the centre of the goals. Yeah. So the umpire stuffed that up as well.
That
and
was
if you
ridiculous.
want to talk about umpire stuff-ups, and we will delve slightly into our game here, in the Puopolo decision, or as Paul Roos calls it, the worst umpiring decision he's ever seen in his life on football fields.
And it is. It definitely is.
Oh, there's been some other shockers.
I think that was shit. That was
he's never seen the one where Neil Craig got a free kick because somebody in the crowd punched him, which happened at Footy Park. He actually talked about how the umpire had to consider, whether McKay was laying in his back. Well, it doesn't matter if he's laying in his back. He's allowed to lay in his back. Go read the rule book, Hayden Kennedy. There is nothing in there. It's a push. That is an active action. Laying on something is not active. That is a passive action. Somebody needs to give this guy a dictionary, a thesaurus, and the AFL laws of the game book, because he doesn't seem to understand it, even though he is the one in charge of the umpires.
Yeah, but Nikki, really, I don't know why people are debating that particular issue, because Puopolo had the ball for umpteen seconds before that.
And he fended off.
And he tried to fend him off, and he was tackled by two players. He's been grabbed. That's holding the ball. He's been actually then singled out by McKay with his massive strength that he's just taken over individually, and he has then he has actually physically rolled the guy over, and that's holding the ball still. And the umpire probably had something like about 7 or 8 seconds that it should have been holding the ball. So you can't then dream of an in the backup afterwards, no matter what it was. And even though 99% of tackles end up in that same position. So although there should be no debate about that last bit, it should be that the umpire is a moron, and he could either be a moron or a cheat. He can take his pick. He's one of the two.
I think the wider issue that came out of the AFL this weekend, and really I'd almost say a sinister issue that has come out of the AFL this weekend, that's being drummed up and given a run in all of the Victorian media outlets.
This is going to be my next point.
Is this issue of confirmation bias, particularly at Subiaco and to a lesser extent the Adelaide Oval. Now, this is a media-driven agenda to ensure that Victorian teams get a better run at the interstate grounds. And, of course, we almost don't need to mention the fact that no mention was made of the run that Melbourne teams get at the Melbourne grounds. And, in fact...
Spot on.
In fact, Robbo on 360 tonight mentioned, and he mourned the loss of the suburban grounds and ground rationalisation, which meant that the sides that were playing at the MCG and Etihad, or whatever the hell they call it now, are not getting the kind of confirmation bias that the other grounds do. And then we had, assertions that, the grounds were built to, for noise and things like that, the Adelaide Oval and Subi.
Yeah, Lewis said that tonight.
So the issue here is the fact that, and what they ignore, and the evidence that they ignore, is, of course, that you get completely lopsided free kick counts in Melbourne favouring Melbourne teams, like the Bulldogs on the weekend against Sydney, like Hawthorn on the weekend against us, like last year when we played the Western Bulldogs over there. Ridiculously lopsided free kick counts. But, of course, there is no mention made of that.
It was the biggest attempt at diversion with the Victorian media I've seen for a long, long time.
It was so obvious.
Two examples, blatant examples of bias in Victoria, Western Bulldogs, as you said, and Hawthorn, and yet they want to single out the
St Kilda one.
interstate, quote unquote, interstate. In a national competition, there is no interstate grounds, right? There's nothing interstate. It's just the Victorian media putting on their VFL hat and calling everyone that's not in Victoria interstate. Well, the fact is that we've been experiencing this in Victoria for God knows how many years, haven't we? And every time it comes up, and it comes up in Subi a bit because, the statistics show that they tend to be on the right end of the umpiring or the free kick count. But it's not a home ground bias issue. It's an issue of the umpires being influenced by crowds, and it's not isolated to quote unquote interstate grounds. It's across the board.
And somebody on Big Footy actually said that they were in at the old footy park. They were in the umpires' room before an AFL game, and the umpires were talking about making sure they'd not get sucked in by the crowd. That they were being very pointed about discussing the crowd noise and not trying to pay free kicks, even though the crowd was yelling.
Yeah, Nikki, I've actually said that before. Because
and that's something I anecdotally know of as well.
Well, mine's anecdotally too. One of my neighbours was an AFL a boundary umpire.
See, the thing
That's
is,
okay.
though, they should be
mind
professional enough to be able
to ignore it.
Well, there should be
there,
no emotion there should be no emotion in umpiring.
Correct.
If there's emotion in umpiring, then you have a bias somewhere, whether it's your own ego or whether it's towards or against one of the teams. If there's any emotion in what you're doing, then you have bias somewhere.
Absolutely spot on. And you know what? To both Nicky and Macca, if those umpires are having those conversations before the game, well, good on them. That's absolutely fine for them to have that conversation and say, right, guys, let's not get sucked into the home crowd stuff today, because you don't want to see, as Finn just said, you don't want to see bias in any umpiring. You just want to see them call the game emotionless and just call it as they see it.
Yep.
No, but part of the discussions, though, that were going on there, Pete, was often that they would try to counter it and take the crowd out of it. So it kind of went too far the other way.
Oh, well, that's the case.
Which is an issue.
That's different to what you said. Now, if what they're saying is, well, we want to take the crowd out of it, so we're going to pay a few free kicks the other way, then okay, then that's fine. Then there's obviously a bias. But if all they're doing is saying, look, let's not let the crowd influence us, well, then I don't have a problem with that.
In the particular game that I was told by the boundary umpire, that was said here by the leading umpire of the day, Adelaide got the opposition got frees 2-1 in their favour against Adelaide. In other words, basically it was more about not giving Adelaide free kicks just because the crowd's roaring, etc., which meant that we often missed out on frees that we should have got.
I'd just like to finish up on the Puopolo one. He should have actually had a free kick paid against him for unwanted sexual contact.
With the ground?
Well, he was pushing back on McKay harder than a bloody Asian hooker, to be honest with you. And
I was concerned. Fair enough. I was concerned about that.
I mean, if I was DMAC, I'd be getting some counselling.
If we move on from the umpiring issue, there was one other news issue that I did want to touch upon and raise.
Was this Josh Kelly?
No. This was more ridiculous Victorian media grovelling that's going on, and that is the narrative that is now coming out of Victorian media relating to Gary Ablett Jr. and his position up on the Gold Coast that seems to be becoming more untenable by the week. And in particular, we have Mark Thompson coming out saying that, Gold Coast should just let him go. And that is the narrative that's coming out of Victoria at the moment. Look, that, Gary's sad, and so he should just be allowed to go. And yet, that very, very same media at the end of last year is celebrating and pumping the fist and saying, you know what? It's about time that players like Bryce Gibbs are held to their contracts. It's
Correct.
And it's a great thing for football that these guys, that the clubs are taking power back and making guys play out their contract. Just another example of the kind of hypocrisy that we have to put up with on a day-to-day basis from the Victorian media.
Just to make it more of a tango. Sorry, Nick, I was just going to say, just to make it more of a tango. The year before, there were one of the same people who said about Dangerfield, we should let him go because he wants to go home.
And it's very interesting if you consider what happened in the NRL today and in Melbourne, to do with a Melbourne Storm player who was basically told, you won't be extended next year. So he went, okay, I'll finish up now. So he's not going to play out the rest of the season, which is something that often happens in the NRL.
Is that Cooper Cronk?
Yep.
No, he's playing out the end of the season.
What happened with that is that he made the decision that he wanted to move back to Sydney for family reasons. So he was basically a carbon copy of Dangerfield. Except what he did and what the club did is they sat down like grown-ups, which the AFL are incapable of doing. They had a grown-up conversation and they said, right, Cooper Cronk said, I need to go back to Sydney for family reasons. I'm not going to renew. The club says, okay, that's fine. We get it. And I'll play my best for the rest of the year, and we'll announce it now. So there's no drama. There's no, media, carrying on following the team all the way through the season. Unfortunately, the AFL has not moved in a position where they can have those kind of grown-up conversations.
If you listen to that press conference by Cooper Cronk, it was one of the best press conferences, best announcements that I've heard in this kind of situation. It was frank, it was upfront, it paid tribute to his teammates. He said, that he'd been selfish with his career for a long time, and it was about time that he gave back to his wife and family, and they were starting to, think about having kids, etc., etc., etc. And it left you thinking that this guy is going to bust his gut for the rest of the season, and not only that, but it probably rallied the rest of the troops at Melbourne Storm, and you watch, they'll play for him for the rest of the season to give him a send-off.
Yeah, they were praising it. And I just find it very contradictory that you've got the AFL media types that are praising this type of thing that's happened, and yet they're the ones that instigate the sagas and instigate, the players not wanting to tell the truth in a way. Because Dangerfield's come out now and actually said that, but he's come out and actually said now that, he made up his mind the year before, which is completely different from what he said previously and completely different from what he said to the club. I just found that very hypocritical.
The rubbish that we get, though, is we get players that ponce around for a whole year saying, I just want to concentrate on my football, I don't need to talk about my contract. I'm contracted for this year, and I just want to concentrate on my football. And you just get this bullshit that's just, and it's insulting to the intelligence of the supporter base. And that last year of Dangerfield, that was an absolute insult to the Crows supporter base. It really was, because the club knew, Dangerfield knew, and there was just all this bullshit that went on for half a year.
But not only that, I mean, where's the integrity of the individual? I mean, Danger's come out and countless times, and he's gone on the footy show and all the rest of it, basically leading everyone to believe that he's going to hang around. It puts his own integrity at risk now, whether that's at his instigation or just a product of, as you say, the media circus. It's just unnecessary for people to be put in that position. As it was, Dangerfield played his guts out in that last season. And had he come out at the beginning of the year and said, look, I'm going back at the end of the season, but I'm going to try my guts out for the Adelaide Crows this season, no, I don't think anyone would have held that against him.
I must admit, I would have much preferred that he did say that, because there's certainly no criticism of Dangerfield for his on-field performance during the whole year. Best club best and fairest, Brownlow medalist, All Australian. He was outstanding. He had a terrific year. We can't knock him for his services, but like Pete said, it was throw-up time every time you heard him interviewed, because he just trotted out the same rhetoric every time, exactly. And I just wonder whether Pete was going to piss off, because he was saying all the same lines, you see. Yeah. Danger said in a recent interview that I heard that he said it was very difficult, because you had to remember to say the same thing all the time. He said you dared not deviate from that. He said otherwise they bounce on you, the media. So in some ways, yes, it was instigated by Dangerfield, but then caged into that situation by the media because he couldn't dare say anything different. So as Pete said, we had to put up with this bullshit all year.
Yeah.
And of course, as Nicky quite rightly also said, I heard him in a different interview say that, yes, he'd made up his mind before, it was all done before the season started.
Yeah. If taking it back to Ablett, which was the beginning of this discussion, Dermot Brereton came out and said, he's unhappy and he's, playing disinterested. When I saw that, the replay and the little highlights and the snippets of Ablett, he didn't look disinterested at all. He looked like a petulant child. He was whinging about what his young teammates were doing because he wasn't playing where he wanted to play, which was in the midfield. It's less about him being at the Gold Coast and more about him getting played up forward by Rodney Eade, because Rodney Eade rightly is trying to develop a young midfield, and Ablett has in my opinion, has further tarnished his reputation by, instead of embracing it and going, all right, I'm going to be here for one more year, maybe two, however long it is. I understand that there's life after me at the Gold Coast and that the coach needs to develop a midfield. I'm going to wrap my arms around these blokes and, set them on the right path. That's what a champion would do. Now, to me, Ablett is an individual. He trains individually. He comes and goes as he pleases. He's divided that club with his personal views, and as much as he's been a star of the competition and has continued to be a star whilst he's been at the Gold Coast, I think he's been a liability at that club.
I think he had his presence and the fact that he has acted as an individual when he's allegedly the leader of those guys and hasn't acted as a leader and accepted the same treatment as they have. I think it would have certainly just destroyed team spirit rather than build it up.
Yeah, well, like PJ says on the chat, he spends 4 days a week away from the club. He trains by himself. He's got his own training regime. He won't play injured. He doesn't like it when he's not played in the position that he would prefer. I mean, what's that describing? That's not describing a leader or a team player.
That's not a captain.
A bloody champion player. That's describing someone throwing a tantrum.
Yep.
And to me, you contrast it with the way people have been raving about Martin, Dustin Martin, for the past 2 weeks. Now he's one of those you kind of would have put in that little bit of a selfish mold previously. Watching him this year, to me, he seems a completely different player. And I actually said to my dad after we watched that first game that he's taken that next step up. And how he showed to me that he's taken that next step up was he wasn't aiming to do it all himself. He was very willing to, if somebody's in a better position, I'm going to hand this off. Or there was the case of one of the young guys who could have handballed it to him to get the goal, but he knew it was this guy. It was going to be this guy's first goal in the AFL, who'd done the work up the field to get it to him, and he gave it back, and then he shepherded. And to me, it's why we love Eddie so much. Because not only is he just an absolute freak, but he shares the ball around. And Ablett doesn't do that. Dangerfield's another one who's getting into that mould who doesn't do that often either.
I think he's certainly maturing, Dustin Martin, and I think that you're probably only 12 months away from him waking up one morning and looking in the mirror and thinking, "What the hell was I thinking with neck tattoos?"
No, I don't think that'll ever happen, unfortunately. 12 months away. Macca, last word to you, and then we need to move on to the Crows game on the weekend.
Well, I was just going to throw it to the panel and just say, what would you actually do with Ablett? Because while he really should serve out his contract, from the club's point of view, they've got the problem that with his behaviour, and I agree with Phoenix. There was this petulant little child on the oval there, rather than a man putting in for his mates. He's also damaging his reputation and also his marketability. But I think that my personal opinion is that they should get rid of him at the end of the year and move on with what they've got, and I think they'd actually go better for it.
I think they, in retrospect, they made a mistake keeping him last year. It was Tony Cochrane trying to puff his chest out and and all the rest of it. But you're right, Mac. Ablett will be devalued at the end of the season. His marketability won't be affected in Victoria because they all think the sun shines out of his backside. But he'll play the last couple of seasons at Geelong out of forward line quite happily and kick his 50. And Geelong, Gold Coast should have moved on last year, I reckon.
All right, we'll draw a line underneath it there. There was lots to talk about from the AFL news all around the grounds. It's lots happening, so it was good to thrash through all that stuff. All right, we probably should move on now and have a chat about what was a really, really strong win on Saturday afternoon. I was at the Coogee Bay Hotel with a few bevs and was able to watch the game and really, really enjoyed the way that we came back from a very, very shaky start and steadied the ship. What were the thoughts from everybody?
Yeah, we've beaten Hawthorn, basically. It was, finally, it's happened. I just think a lot of people were talking about it, and Pike's kind of stuck to it a little bit, that they made changes at quarter time. If you watch that first quarter, you can see we made changes during that first quarter.
I'm going to say, Nick, it wasn't the quarter time. It was about halfway through the first quarter.
Yep. And the fact that we've got a team that is able to do that is a huge credit to the coaching staff, but also to the players. There's a huge buy-in going in there, and it's only promising. I still think we were a bit below our standards of what we can be, but that little bit, just that first quarter bit, just made me go, yep.
Yeah. PJ Crow's on the chat nails it. Because what I think would have surprised us in the first 15 minutes was that Hawthorn didn't set up the way Hawthorn normally do. And
no, they were worried about us.
Well, I don't know whether they were worried. They just put up a good structure to try and counter what we're good at. And they played a lot deeper in defence, and their forwards were a lot higher, which meant that we struggled with transition. We struggled to get the ball out, and we struggled to get any run. And they stretched us when they were transitioning. The fact that he was able to restructure us, and the fact that our blokes were able to implement what he asked, as you say, from probably about the 15 to 20 minute mark in the first quarter, it's a real insight into how he's training them in terms of adaptability and versatility. And we looked like a rabble for the first 20 minutes. We were chasing jumpers and we were out of position and getting caught behind the play quite a bit. And yet we looked like a different side once we restructured.
Yeah, and you're quite right, because before that, the way that Hawthorn played with their possession game totally destroyed our structure completely. And we did look like a rabble. We weren't touching the ball very much at all, and we looked very ineffectual. But rather than the old policy, we went back in time to "in Neil we trust." We actually had a coach that could actually make changes and play a different type of game plan. And we actually I thought we played 3 different game plans in that first quarter. The first one, which was terrible, of course. The second one, where we actually, the idea was to really throttle them and stop that possession game. And then a slight adaptation of our game in running the ball forward, because by the end of the quarter we were starting to get our proper game going a little bit as well.
Yeah, Vardy mentions Douglas, and I had another look because he was a bit quiet. But, Nicky, I don't know how you saw it or Pete. I reckon he might have had a run with roll with Rioli, am I right?
Yeah, whenever Rioli came up through the midfield, Douglas sat on him.
Yeah, and so that might have... he certainly played a different game to the GWS game, and initially I thought he was quite poor, but then when I was watching it again, he was often shadowing Rioli, and let's be honest, Rioli didn't have a great influence on the game, so
nope.
There's probably a bit of credit due there to Douglas.
Yeah, and then I'm as guilty as you, Felix, because we both said on on Sunday night that we thought that he he as well as he played the week before, he didn't play very well this week. But then again, he may well have been doing a job as has been pointed out by PJ Crowe.
Yeah,
Cooler.
it kind of looked that way. Yeah, a bit of a cooler. It wasn't a hard tag, but it was certainly a run with roll, I think.
And the other thing I noticed is that we didn't get, as you said, they were trying to stifle our outside run. And if you look at the numbers for those outside runners of Miller, Cameron, Atkins, and McKay, they're not high numbers for all four of them.
Hampton
and
as well.
I know, and yeah, Hampton. Well, he plays a bit of both.
Yeah, I think Hampton has been a bit underrated actually, particularly last weekend. You know, he did a lot of really, really hard bulldozing work around the contest, and you know, what did he end up with? 10 or 11 tackles or something like that.
Yeah, he had 10 tackles. And Sloaney had 16. And Sloaney actually had more tackles than he had possessions going into the last quarter.
I think that he's just like, I mean, I think clearly he could do a little bit more in terms of possession count, but I think that he's just been a little bit underrated from last week.
And all you have to do is watch at the end of the very first the quarter time break. So at the end of the first quarter, he's heading to the bench for the start of the second quarter because that's where he starts because we bring him on to relieve Sloan and Crouch. And you actually see Pike breaks away, calls him over, just calls him so he stops, and he talks to him very quietly and gives him a good pat on the back. And so obviously he's doing stuff that the coach is happy with. And he's also reinforcing what he wants him to improve on. We know he's in there to learn to play with this midfield. He's not going to do a breakout game from the start getting high numbers. That's not going to happen.
I don't even think it's the game plan. As we highlighted on Sunday night, Macca and I, our 5 outside runners, and you probably call it half a dozen, all had under 75% time on ground, between 72 and 75% time on ground. Whereas Hawthorn's main midfield rotation were all in the high 70s and low to mid 80s. And as PJ points out with Hampton running out the end of quarters, I think that's become a real weapon for us. The fact that we do rotate deep with our outside runners, they all pick up the mid-teens possessions, but they're all fresh at the end of the game.
Yeah. And that's I know we've kind of lamented a bit on the board that we're getting a few hamstrings more than we had last year. But if you actually look over the whole of the AFL, we're not unique in that respect. That's actually a fairly common injury that's occurring right now for many players. But we've run over size. We appear to be fitter.
I just think Kirtley he's a big body. He's a tall bloke. He's a big heavy body, and he's doing a lot of crash and bash and a lot of hard work in there. And so credit to him. I think that he's doing a bit, and I'd be very, very confident that he would retain his place for this week, even though his possession count wasn't great. But as you say, Feem, a lot of the possession counts are down, apart from the Matty Crouch doing he had his usual sort of gluttony of possessions. But no, I'm very, very happy with Kirtley's game. But also, we really should make mention of Big Sauce. He cops a lot of criticism, but perfect 10 in the coach's votes. Clearly the best man on the ground.
Oh yeah.
When he brings that kind of form, and admittedly the opposition wasn't great, but in terms of ruckman, but if he can bring that kind of form, if he can bring that kind of form, that is a huge difference to our side. And I thought that the best thing about the win was the fact that our top 3 or 4 players were entirely different to what they were in the first week, which shows a good balance and good depth.
Agree. Sauce, despite McAvoy not being the best ruckman going around, I mean, he had to do it alone all match. So they had.
Except when Sloaney did it.
Yeah. But, they had... who's the guy that chops out for McAvoy? Well, they have a couple. I think Roughhead chops out occasionally. And Vickery's the other one, yeah.
And sometimes they put in Roughhead.
Yeah, so they had 2 or 3. And Sauce basically went, apart from a couple of minutes, he went all day. So, and not only did he win the ruck contest, but he took a couple of telling grabs up forward and should have had 2 goals. So... Hopefully, that's given him a bit of a G up, because I think Sauce can be a bit of a confidence player at times, and that should have given him some confidence.
Just on Vickery. No, I was just going to say that on Vickery. I'm not really sure why Hawthorn chased him. He's got to be one of the worst first-round draft picks that have been picked for many a long year. Seriously, he can barely play football.
They want to see if they can de-Richmondize somebody because they've discovered that we can't.
There's a lovely little thing on Twitter going at the moment where I'm not sure who it is, but somebody's keeping count of the wins for Richmond without Vickery and the losses for Hawthorn with Vickery. And so,
Nice.
so at the moment, we've got Richmond 2-0 without Vickery and Hawthorn 2 with Vickery. So it's just called Vickery Watch.
And looking at that guy play, I'm not surprised. Seriously, now and again he'll pull out a grab out of nowhere, but gee, just so little.
I think he's just there to clear out a tall, Macca, to be honest with you. I mean, they play pretty small up forward. They've got an interesting structure at the moment. It's 2 weeks in a row they played Gunston for more than 2/3 of the game off half-back. Whereas in the past he's been that third tall, sneak under your guard sort of bloke. Now essentially they're playing Vickery pretty high, playing Ruffy essentially in the inside 30, and just relying on Bruce and Puopolo to snag a few. It's a very interesting, and I'm not sure whether it's an effective system or not.
Didn't look very dangerous to me. And seriously, it did not look dangerous. Whereas before, you'd shudder when it went up forward for because you'd think Gunston will get this or Ruffy will get it, because you had to watch at least two of them, and if not, then they had the resting ruckman as well that also used to take grabs as well.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it really, when you've only got Vickery up, for God's sake, I mean, it's really like nothing.
Well, they were quite fortunate in a sense that Jenkins went down, because with them pulling Schoenmakers out, they look completely mismatched down back. And if JJ had played a full game, I think we would have won by bloody another 5 or 6 goals.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Just on the ruck, there was that case in the third quarter where Rioli put his hand up, but he did it behind Jacobs' back, so Jacobs couldn't see that he'd done that. And then he goes up, and you can actually see Jacobs look at the umpire going, why did he hit it? Where's my free? And then there was, we pushed a little bit more towards half forward, and there was another ball up. And you can see Sloan immediately go and have a chat to the umpire. And obviously it was about that. And they were told. He's obviously then said something quite quickly to Source, hey, Hawthorn are doing this. The next time we have a ball up or a throw in the Hawthorn forward line, Jacobs actually goes up to the umpire and he stops it to check who nominated for the opposition team.
Yeah.
So he holds it up to find out. That's some incredibly quick thinking on the to stop them doing something.
Well, it's much smarter thinking building off of it. To have this bloody rule where you got to put your hand up and say,
it's a stupid rule.
Oh, all the players hate it. It's like, I'm back in school. Hello, it's me. It should just be 2 players, one from each team go up. If it's somebody else, if a third one goes up, then you ping that. You just allow 2. That's it.
You would be the 100,000th person I've heard say that. So it's obviously very, very transparent, and I don't mean because you did it, but what I'm saying, everybody can see that, except the AFL. I just don't get it.
Just want to give a shout out to one of my very favourite players who I've enjoyed watching since he came to the club, number 22, Andy Otten. Really happy with the way that he's gotten on in the last couple of weeks, and I thought he had a really, really good game, and once again showed that there's no substitute for football intelligence and a big football brain.
That's right.
And even though his athleticism might not be what some players is, he's a very, very smart footballer, and I think he still offers plenty to the footy club. And so well done on him for his 17 possessions and a goal.
Great
that goal, and you loved the players running to him when he kicked that goal, because we've seen him up forward before. They're a bit helicoptery. They're very Ian Perry-ish. They can be a bit hit or miss. So it was fabulous that he actually seems to have fixed his kicking. The other thing that I loved was that tap he did to Atkins. he knew he couldn't mark it. He was under pressure, and Atkins was right there, bang, and that gives us that open free for McKay's final run in, which really put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and the assist to Eddie,
brilliant. Oh yeah, he actually said about that. He felt bad for taking the mark because Eddie was in front of him, and he actually turned to Eddie and said, "Do you want it?" And Eddie said, "Quick, give it to me." And so he did.
No, he's a ripper, and for all of the tragedy that he's had in football, in a football context, wonderful to see him back playing good football. Very, very smart player. A couple of other mentions too, just to David McKay, who has quite often been the subject of a lot of derogatory comments. He certainly made good with 3 very, very telling goals, and gave some good run, even though he was very quiet in the first couple of quarters, although he probably wasn't alone in that. But look, you could have run through a whole lot of players that in the end played pretty well, and as you said, Finn, quite correctly identified, there was a fairly even spread of sort of mid to high teen possession getters, and you can throw in Atkins, who curiously got the same amount of possessions that he did the previous week, and only 2 less goals. He had 19 and 1 instead of 19 and 3. He got, for some reason, week 1 he was a superstar, and week 2 not so much. So it's funny how the game can work out, isn't it? But Riley Knight, again, just a couple of critical plays in that last quarter where he was it the last quarter? Second quarter against Burgoyne, where he keeps his feet and delivers to McKay, and then also a lovely little bit of running and delivers to Tex for a set shot. I read somewhere where quite often whatever Riley Knight touches turns to gold, and he just does seem to have a happy knack of creating good things when he gets the footy. So lovely to see him up and about.
I'll tell you what else got no credit in the coverage and that the ceiling goal, basically, or the final goal that we keep through
from Brown,
Luke Brown. No one's mentioned that it's nearly the end of the game, and Luke Brown's just about done a 150-metre sprint to get there.
He did.
And the thing is, on AFL 360 on Monday night, they were raving about Pickens' goal. Yeah. No, Pickett didn't kick it, but he gave it to Bontempelli. He started
similar
in the
mark,
back
but not
line.
as good.
Same kind of thing. But the fact is that Brown actually started as a backman, not as a midfielder like Picken. Started as the backman. He was the one who got it out of our defence, and then he kept going, and he's the one who marked it, and then went back and kicked it.
Yeah, that's right.
To me, that's better than Pickens.
I can't remember who he was on, but he burnt off. I reckon it might have been Puopolo actually, or it was or it could have been Bruce actually.
Yeah, it was Bruce. Bruce, I think, was chasing him.
It was Bruce. And he outmarked Sanderson. Probably about 20 metres behind by the time the ball got to the goal square. And not only that, but after running 150 metres at full tilt, he's taken that mark very comfortably. He's an underrated player, Luke Brown, when he's fit.
Tell you what, if you had to have a player in the Adelaide side to have a shot for goal for you, you'd probably pick Brownie, because probably about the last 6 shots he's had for goal, I can't remember him missing.
Edward.
No, I think you're right, Macca.
From 52.
He kicks the ball beautifully for goal. There's no doubt about it. Hey, look, we might draw a line under that, and as we move towards probably the last quarter of the show, do we want to do the cockwomble, or do you want to get into the showdown?
Should we do the cockwomble first?
We'll do the cockwomble.
Oh, well, Jesus Christ, you people.
We just like to keep an option. Toes, we started this little discussion, so you could kind of, get it up and going.
Yeah, whatever. Get on with it. You're not getting the full song now. I don't care anymore.
Aw. Well, we've already kind of done it. So there's a few nominations here. So you've got Hayden Kennedy for his stupidity in trying to explain the Puopolo decision. You've got the Victorian media trying to do the deflection regarding, poor Victorian teams are so hard done by when they play outside. Who else was it? There's quite a few, I was thinking. But now I've lost my train of thought.
Lee Matthews got to get one for saying Puopolo's was a free kick. I've got one for you, Nikki, that but we haven't talked about this yet. Mark Robinson saying that Aaron's kiss with her wife at the AFL Women's Awards was, shows how far we've come and all the rest of it. And then he said, might have been a little sensual for the men watching.
He did say that.
What a fucking idiot! If you, sorry for my language there, but apparently I didn't get to read his article in the Herald Sun because it was behind a paywall and be stuffed if I'm going to pay for that rubbish. But apparently his article in the Herald Sun covering that night and Erin being congratulated with a kiss from her wife. A wife who she's had for quite some time, and they've got children together, and all the rest of it. It was childish. It was chauvinistic. It was ridiculous, and it was really indicative of how far we've got to go. I don't think it as a public, but certainly in the Melbourne media, in terms of accepting the AFL women's competition as just a bloody competition. It doesn't matter whether they're women, men, or bloody lizards. They're just people playing football in a competition. Yeah. And I don't know why he had to highlight that so moronically. He just showed himself off as he tried to politicise it, and he just came off sounding like
he's not nuanced enough to.
Well, and we could throw Dermot Brereton in there as well, because I saw a tweet where on SEN he questioned the AFL CEO as to whether the AFLW was a lesbian grooming kind of place.
Oh, unbelievable!
Yeah. Oh, that was my other one. Yep, that one got
me angry.
Dermot's
probably up there as well.
There's quite a few this week. So we've got, or we could all just do the entire umpiring fraternity, but that is a disservice because there are some very good umpires in amongst that mob. But
I reckon Robbo, because on top of that stupid statement, he made the stupid statement about that ground rationalisation had hurt teams in respect of hometown umpiring. So he's just a half drunken idiot.
We can also add in, we can give him a third one because of him going on about what a good bloke Jordan Lewis is, and I shouldn't do that. He's a bit of a thug. Sorry, he had carryover points.
Let's give it to Robbo.
Yeah, Mark Robert.
Done.
He's a shocker. I don't know why they still have him on AFL 360,
He's just, shocking. Right. The
Essendon people. Who's in charge of that show, and who's the head person in? It's a whole Essendon coterie.
So what's the what is now being discussed as potentially the most riveting and the biggest build-up yet for a showdown is this weekend, Saturday evening, Port home game. 1 and 2 on the premiership table. Port managed to jag first spot by playing Witches Hats on Sunday afternoon. How do we see that game unfolding? I have some concerns. I think I don't know what happened to Port Adelaide in the last 2 years. I'm of course very happy and grateful that it did, but very very much the same or very similar personnel exists in that team as did in 2014. Was it when they had their run? And I'm not sure, and of course they've improved that. Paddy Ryder looked in terrific form on the weekend, and I just have some concerns that that season they had in 2014, that a lot of those players just now seem to be sort of back up and running. So anyway, how do we see the game?
Come on, Pete. They've played Fremantle, who would have been beaten by our bloody women's team. No disrespect. And who did they play in? Sydney, who
they played
had
Sydney
about
with 7 players out.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
their form line isn't valid.
Yeah, I'm actually worried about their form line because I can't quite get a handle on them yet, because I wanted to watch Sydney versus the Bulldogs. And yet, watching that game, it didn't feel fast to me. Now, we know the Bulldogs are a fast side. They're supposedly this fast side, but I can see that they've actually seemed to have slowed down a bit this year. They're not playing manic like they did last year. And, yeah, that Friday night game, I don't know if you guys saw it.
Can I point something else out that
Did it look
Robinson
fine?
said? Mark
Yeah.
Robinson, the other thing that Robinson said was that he was talking about the fact that Dan Hanbury has transformed himself and decided to give up the booze and live a more healthy lifestyle in order to get the best out of himself. Mark Robinson had the temerity to say that him giving up the booze had adversely affected his football, that he should basically get back to getting on the piss, because apparently it's of no benefit to try and be healthier and fitter and recover better by not drinking alcohol. I mean, spoken like a true alcoholic,
cigarettes.
Robbo. Anyway,
I did hear that remark.
Anyway,
I'm a little bit concerned about Port, though. I'm in
come on,
Peter's
you
camp.
guys.
No, look, the thing is not that.
They are playing some nice fast football.
It's the fear of the unknown
Against
because,
stationary cars.
No, well, look, look, they played cardboard cutouts, and I accept that. But the week before that, I thought they were very good against Sydney away, and it was because they played physical football and because they went flat out and hard at the ball, at the man, and it's as if they've been revived because they looked rather disinterested last year and the year before, and at the moment they are a very keen side and they're going flat out. Now, are they good? I don't know. I just genuinely have a lot of trouble placing them.
I don't think it matters whether they're good or not. There's three fundamental questions. Do they have enough firepower up forward to kick a winning score? Do they have enough midfield depth to run with us for 4 quarters? And do they have the defence to hold us to under 100 points?
Well,
the answer to those 3 questions is no. They lose. Simple.
The thing is, it's a big question of who gets the ball first. They do have the power, some firepower up forward to kick goals. Yes, they do.
No.
And Robbie Gray is very classy. So and Wingard, as much as I detest him, is a very, very good player around the goals. So they're 2 players alone that can actually get you goals.
They're not going to be able to afford to play Gray up forward because they're going to need Gray to run through the midfield, Macca. They're not going to have the luxury of playing Robbie Gray up forward for 2/3 of the game.
Yeah, but their skipper's back in form again. He had a very, very ordinary year last year, and he's playing good football again. The young lad with the double-barreled name who wants to bash everybody, part of the Bash Brothers, thinks that's terrific. But he goes very, very hard at it, and I think his attitude at getting the ball is certainly very, very good. Wines is in top form. I am having genuine trouble placing. They might turn out just to be duds. I don't know. But they've played 2 games. They've won 2 games. They've won them well. And the one thing I've noticed about is that they are going 100%. And if you go 100%, sometimes you achieve things that you shouldn't probably achieve. And I hope it's not beating us.
Yeah, I'm in your camp, Macca. And look, the question that I would put to the panel is that who's that midfield that was just so dynamic and so dominant in 2014? Who's missing from that midfield?
Nobody.
It's that same midfield. It's Boak, it's Wingard, it's Wines, it's Gray, it's Ebert, it's Polak has hit a bit of form.
Polak's out.
He's out, is he? Do we know that for sure?
Well, he's got that trouble with his foot again.
Fantastic. I mean, I don't mean that for he's hurt, but he's not playing.
So I just think that they need, and also, I mean, at the end of the day, last year we were absolutely flying, on fire. They're horrible with nothing to play for, and they absolutely bashed us up in that, and they were largely responsible for that result we ended up getting against West Coast because Smith ended up out injured, Sloan ended up getting reported.
That's when Jenkins did his ankle.
Jenkins does his ankle. They well and truly bashed us up. And stuffed us up.
Horrible.
So that they
people make me sick.
I just think they need to be respected. It's a Port home game. They need to be respected.
I agree with you.
It doesn't matter if it's a Port home game. We're still 50-50 on Port home games in terms of crowd. I will gladly run the Sunday night show on Sunday night and humbly accept your apologies when we've won by 10 goals plus. That's how confident I am.
I don't think it'll be that big.
10 goals plus. We are going to poleaxe them.
I hope you're right, but I must admit,
It scares me when he does this. Never ends well.
Hang on, the last time I was this bullish about us was when we beat West Coast in Subi. I've got the same feeling this week.
The last time you were this bullish was on GWS in round 1.
Yes. That one wrong.
Yeah,
I was
that's
waiting
true.
for somebody to point
I
that
said
out.
bullish about us, so that's the caveat.
Yeah, no, fair enough, mate.
That's the
Fair
caveat.
enough.
We are going to poleaxe Port Adelaide. I don't think they, in those 3 questions that I asked, I don't think they match up at any stage. Don't forget that they're one short this year up forward with Jay Schultz down, so they've only got one target, and he's a squib. They've got a good ruckman, yes, and they've got a solid first rotation midfield, but they don't have the depth on the outside guys to run with us for 4 quarters. It's not very hard for an Ollie Wines or a Brad Ebert or a Chad Widgard or a Travis Boak to run hard when they're essentially running around stationary opposition. If they're going to be forced to run far more defensively against us than they were against Fremantle. They don't have the depth in the rotations to go with us. They don't have the forwards to kick a winning score, and they don't have the defence to cover all the bases. Jenkins playing or not playing, because I would imagine if Lever comes in and JJ's not right, we'll play Otten up forward, and he's shown that he's a good grab, and a smart player. So I don't think we'll lose anything with JJ not playing.
Well, I hope our players don't go in with your attitude, because then we will get beaten.
Nothing wrong with being confident, Macca.
No, but you must respect your opponent. And
no, you don't need to respect your opponent. You just need to be confident in your own ability and play your own game.
Well, I was always taught to respect them. I don't mean like them and not hit them or anything like that.
Yeah,
I just
you used to play for Torrens, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, and look where that got you.
Any change? What changes do we see? What changes do we see from the team that beat Hawthorn?
Probably Lever in for Jenkins.
Lever will definitely be in, and Jenkins may or may not be in. But if Jenkins plays, I think somebody's got to go.
And it'll probably be Kelly.
I think Kelly, but
has to be.
Bickley says Otten, and now I think that would be wrong.
No, he's just saying that to get people to call up and tell him he's an idiot.
Yeah, you're probably right, because it doesn't make sense to me where you've got a guy who was very, very high up in your best players and he's very versatile, can play back, forward, and
versatility is the key there, Macca.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he can pinch hit in the ruck as well.
Exactly.
And, so yeah, I can't see any reason why you would, but maybe Bickley was just doing for rating purposes. But
well, I think
what
he would see is he would see a like-for-like swap with Jake Lever. So I think what he would be saying is if Jenkins plays, well then Otten loses his spot that he had up forward. So Otten goes back. And then Jake Lever must come into the side. And I think we all acknowledge that he must come into the side. And so the most like-for-like change there would be Otten, because Kelly's not a like-for-like for Lever. So I'd imagine that, not that I agree with that, but I'd imagine that would have been Bickley's rationale.
It was
no doubt.
exactly that.
But he's wrong.
Yeah, and I think he's wrong too. Look, I think we will win, but I have this terrible. I always do them with a showdown, in the sense that, well, not last year I didn't, and not so much the year before either, but in general, in normal years, it means so much more to them than it does to us, seemingly. And they come out and if they don't win the game, they like to physically hurt us. And
we always take injuries out of this game, Macca. That is something that we can be assured of. We take injuries, we take possible reports. We always end up damaged out of these games. There's no question about that.
We don't need to leave anything on the table, though, because we've got a couple of easy... Well, I mean, Bombers maybe not, I don't know, but we've got Bombers and then Gold Coast, the two after. So, why not go hard and get to 3-0?
I think we will, but it's just that it's like when we played against Sydney in that semi-final. It wasn't just the ability of Sydney that beat us. They beat us by bashing us out the way in the start of that first quarter and getting that particular lead which they got before we got started. And we asked slow starters.
I'll tell you something I've noticed though, Macca, and this is the only reason I'm starting to turn a little bit with regards to my pessimism, is because you're right, we got belted up on the inside by Sydney in that semi-final, but I think what the club has done has gone, rather than remain a contested ball inside team, we've gone stuff it. We're going to be an outside running team. We've gone from being a plodding midfield to being a lightning quick midfield, and I don't think it's such a big, like we used to pride ourselves on winning clearances and contested ball, but in the first 2 weeks we've only broken even in those two stats, and it's been our run on the outside and our metres gained that has hurt the opposition. And perhaps this is what the club has decided to do in the absence of any real inside talent, is to basically go, well, stuff it, we're going to play a different way.
You play to your strengths, there's no doubt about that. And so you might well be right, but I don't want to see a situation, that would be my nightmare, if Port Adelaide got, say, 3 quick goals in the first 5 or 7 minutes of the game, because you never give a mug an even break. You never give them an even break, because they then think they're in the game, and you're going to have this on your hands for the whole game. Whereas if you could jump Port Adelaide early, shut the crowd out, and keep them out of the game, then I think we do have the ability, perhaps even to tear them apart. But if they start off well and they throw the physical aspect at us and they score out of it, then it really scares me.
Macca, you know as well as I do that that's going to happen. You know that they're going to come out and they're going to kick 3 or 4 goals, and they're going to be breathing fire. And so the way that this game is going to go is that it'll be up to us to claw back, because they will come out and kick 3 or 4 goals, probably unanswered. I think you know that as well as I do.
That's right.
I'm willing to bet we're 2 goals up at quarter time. I don't think we're going to have another slow start.
A slow start against Hawthorn, you also need to consider that the team bus took 40 minutes to get to the ground. So that impeded our actual preparation before the game with Hawthorn.
I actually think all the pressure is on Port Adelaide. And you guys stated, Pete, you said earlier that this is the same midfield that ran around in 14. Well, this is 3 years down the track. And it just shows that you get Port between the ears, because they drop their heads really quickly. They'd be cock-a-hoop that they're on top of the table too, Zip. But underneath all of that, they'd be thinking, yeah, but we only beat Fremantle last week. It'll only take a concerted effort by a powerhouse team like the Adelaide Crows to put them back where they know they belong, which is mid-table at best. And I would not mind betting that we come out firing ourselves in this first quarter, and we're a couple up at quarter time, and we run all over them.
I'm hoping you're right, but I'm fearing you might not be.
You're too scarred, Macca. You're scarred by the Port Adelaide Magpies, mate.
I know, I'm scarred by Port Power as well. We're behind, mate. They've won more games than we have.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, look, any say, as we move towards the end of the show, folks, any save rounds, any last little bits that anyone wants to jump in with?
Okay, Showdown medalists. There's been some interesting nominations in the chat. I reckon Atkins.
Rory Sloane for mine.
I don't know. Cameron, I reckon. I'd also like to ask. There are a couple
for Cameron in the chat.
I'd also like to pose the question, and we might chuck this on Twitter during the week. There's been some banter on the Showdown banter thread in Big Footy. Would you give up a AFLW Grand Final win for a win this week?
No.
Gonna hate me, but yes.
Pete? No, I'd keep the grand final win.
There you go.
I just can't.
That up on Twitter during the week.
I just can't stand losing to Port Adelaide. Sorry,
So you'd sacrifice a grand final win, a premiership, Macca. You'd sacrifice one of those cups in the trophy cabinet just because it's not a men's trophy for a win against Port. That is really only one of 22 rounds this year.
That's how much I hate Port. Yes.
You realise we've won premierships after losing to Port, don't you?
Yeah, but I hate
Their
Port.
first one.
Anyway, you're entitled to your opinion there, Macca, and I'll just quickly jump in with my tip for the Showdown medal. I think that Kelly Hampton has just been on the verge of a breakout game, and I think it might be on Saturday night. So there you go. There's my roughie.
Ooh, that
There's
one
my
is
roughie call.
That's a roughie
I think
call.
he's just on the verge of a 20 to 25 possession, 10 tackle, 3-goal game, and I reckon that would get him over the line.
Well, I have a feeling that Scorpus might run with Showdown medalist on Game of Crows on Thursday night. So for those listening in, have a think about it between now and then, because that could be the question for the week.
Okay, do you want to wrap us up, Fane, with all the calls?
So don't forget, on Thursday, as I mentioned just then, we've got Scorpus's Thursday night preview. On Saturday night at half-time, you'll hear me, perhaps after a few bevs, do the...
If I remember, maybe me.
Now, Nikki, are you going to the game?
No.
Oh, damn it. I'm hoping that one day when you go to the game, you'll call in at half-time and, we can have a live cross from the game. But anyway.
If Optus lets me do it from there.
Yeah, well, yeah, whatever. But yeah, join me at halftime for the main break. We doubled our live listeners last week, so on that trend, we'll be the highest rating halftime show in town by about round 20.
So from 3 to 6?
Was that, sorry?
From 3 to 6?
No. There was from 11 to 22.
Oh, nice.
Oh, dear.
We started in double figures.
That's right.
It's good of the family to listen.
And yeah, that's right. I just had like 6 different devices going. Sunday night, obviously, we have the Sunday night wrap, hopefully talking about my prediction of a massive boil over, or not a boil over, but a massive win to us.
I hope you're right.
You can follow us on Twitter, AFL Crowcast. You can like our Facebook page, AFL Crowcast. Don't forget any of our shows. If you ever want to Skype in and have a chat, it's BF Crowcast. I tend to have Skype open, so if you do want to have a chat. And Crows Fan Central is up and running, so read the articles there. Submit an article yourself if you're feeling adventurous, and read up on what a couple of mugs think about things from time to time. I think that's about it, Pete.
Thanks, mate. Much appreciated, and that gets through a whole lot of stuff there that I would never remember. Great to have everybody along with us tonight. Thanks, everyone, for your comments on our live chat. We really do appreciate your participation. Thanks very much to the panel for getting up out of your sick beds tonight, Nikki and Macca. We appreciate having you along as always. And as always, thanks, Finn, for all of the technical support you provide, as well as your comments throughout the evening. All right, that takes us out for the evening. Great to have you all with us, and we look forward to chatting with you again on the next AFL Crowcast.
Night.
Night.